everyone. Welcome to The Mill. My name is Rachel Bellatori. I am your host and the founder and CEO of Mill & Co. Today with us is a very special person, a friend, a client, and someone that is really making an impact in the Boston scene, Erik Jefferson. Erik, thanks so much for being here today.
No, Rachel, thank you. Excited for our conversation. And I'll say you've been a phenomenal resource to myself and our practice. Looking forward to hopefully being able to pay that forward and share something, that resonates with your listeners.
Yeah, thanks so much. So let's learn a little bit more about Erik. His pronouns are he, him, and his. He currently serves as the Chief Investment Officer for Flagship Harbor Advisors, an independent registered investment advisor, otherwise known as an RIA, based in downtown Boston, founded in 2010. In this role, Erik oversees the design and implementation of the firm's core portfolios and leads the development of macroeconomic, capital market, and thought leadership publications. Additionally, Erik owns and operates TrestleBridge Capital, a boutique financial planning practice offering a concierge wealth management experience to a small number of personal clients. Before joining Flagship Harbor Advisors, Erik spent a decade as an investment consultant with LPL Financial. His tenure included serving as a voting member within LPL's asset management division, and later as a regional vice president, where he frequently presented at conferences showcasing the firm's holistic planning and investment capabilities. Erik is a real underachiever here. He's a graduate of Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, where he earned his bachelor's degree in economics and sociology and was an all-NESCAC offensive lineman on the varsity football team. So he's also unathletic. He holds the Chartered Financial Analyst, or the CFA, Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst, CAIA, and Certified Wealth Strategist, CWS designations. For those who are not familiar, those are incredibly difficult to achieve. Additionally, Erik holds several security licenses throughout LPL Financial, including the Series 7 General Securities Representative, Series 63 Uniform Securities Agent State Law Exam, and Series 65 Uniform Investment Advisor Law Exam. I have a bachelor's degree from Johns Hopkins University. Erik is an active member of the Boston Economic Club and the CFA Society of Boston, where he volunteers on the career development and content committees. Outside of work, Erik enjoys golfing, spending time on the water, and making memories with his wife, 2 children, and their puppy, Lewis. After nearly a decade living in Boston's historic North End, he now resides in Canton, Massachusetts. I need a drink and a breath. Holy cow, Erik. How do you do it?
Well said. Technically, I think it was second team all NESCAC, so I don't know if that matters in the fine print there.
It doesn't. Semantics. So, Erik, what drew you to finance? How did this journey unfold?
So as long back as I can remember, I feel like I always liked numbers and liked working with people, and that can be obviously somewhat of a unique combination. Only so many fields that I think really cater to both. And, for me, financial services just seemed like a pretty natural fit coming out of college. Prior to where I am now, I think you mentioned in the intro, I'd spent 10 years at LPL. In that role, I would coach financial advisors on how they structure all of the investment aspect of the business. So different platforms, managers, tools, resources, best practices. I then take that, tie it back to everything else that you do. On occasion in that role, would actually be invited to sit in with advisors across the table from their clients, being there as the investment specialist or expert. And remember, there's one meeting towards the end of my tenure at LPL. I was with an advisor in Woodbury, New York. We were sitting across the table. He had a client, a woman in her early 60s, and she had worked for this company for probably 15, 20 years. They were just acquired, and she wasn't sure if her role was going to be maintained post merger, and it took a little while for the advisor to unpack this. And clearly, I mean, she had some concerns about this, and finally, he just went off script and said, "Hey, listen, based on all the work that we've done, based on how disciplined you've been over the years, and responsible saving, investing, living a modest lifestyle, you're going to be able to accomplish everything you've said is important to you and never have to work another day for the rest of your life." And I'm literally getting chills as we're saying this, because I remember the woman just absolutely breaking down in tears. And we hadn't appreciated what a burden, how much that had just been weighing her down. And I thought to myself, I enjoyed my role, had a lot of success there, but wanted a career that would give me the ability to have that sort of emotional impact on somebody else's life. And coincidentally, it was probably a month or two later, I'd sent an email to the founder of Flagship, gentleman David Kaufman. They were a client of mine earlier at my time at LPL, had kept in touch, great organization. Literally sent him a note wishing him a happy birthday, and he had responded shortly thereafter. Hey, by the way, I hadn't realized, you went through the CFA. We're in the process of hiring a CIO as well. There's a advisor that's retiring. They're very specific over who they want to take over. We think you would meet those qualifications. Would you be interested to come into this side of the table? And fast forward, here I now am.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about TrestleBridge and how all that came to be?
Yeah. So TrestleBridge, as I mentioned, is the wealth management portion of what we do at the RIA. So obviously, a lot of the investments that are available to other advisors are certainly included in that. That's where we also have a dedicated wealth management approach that includes financial planning, as well as a lot of the service, the communication, the client experience. And for me, even going back to that example I shared earlier, there's so many things that go into positioning yourself when you think about wealth, putting your best foot forward, being able to properly plan. That's something I have a lot of clients that will tell me, just appreciate the fact, we don't have to worry about this. So I'll go through, here's our checklist of the 55 things. I have a lot of people stop. That's why we hire you. We want you to be able to do this so we can spend our time and our energy, focused on the things that we want to do. But again, recognizing that, there is a lot that goes into making sure you're putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, 100%. And you talked about that defining moment of that woman and the relief that washed over her when she realized that she was actually going to be safe and secure financially for her future. Can you talk about some other defining moments in your career that helped shape your current investment philosophy?
Yeah, so great question. And I took over in the fall of 2021. If you recall, the following year, very difficult year for investors. The inflation that we're dealing with, even still today, was originally met with the most aggressive interest rate hiking campaign from the Federal Reserve. And that had translated to double-digit declines for both stocks and bonds. Fortunately, on average, that only happens about once every 50 years. That was a good, hey, you get through that, the rest of this should probably be easy. And as I had taken over, we had started making some changes to the portfolios. We had been relatively well positioned for this. Obviously, in hindsight, knowing what you know now would have done more. But that was something we're actually able to avoid a lot of the volatility. Clients were reasonably happy. And unfortunately, that sort of masked the fact that we didn't have a process in place for how we ultimately adjust and reposition that portfolio when macro conditions then evolve. Of course, they did in 2023. That was a very good year. We had been slower sort of getting back into the market. And that was one, it was very frustrating where you went through a historically difficult period. You had some very great results and very quickly gave those right back. And so that was an opportunity for us to really sit down, go through, here are the different aspects of the portfolio. Here's the time horizon. Here's ultimately what we would need to see to sell those positions, whether that's the longer term anchor aspect of a portfolio or something that's more tactically managed, based upon what our outlook for risk is. But that was an exercise that truly has shaped how we manage portfolios today. And I think even more importantly, that exercise sort of applied to all aspects of our business. So on the planning side, even the client communication and experience, we're constantly reflecting on, hey, what are we doing? What's working well? And what are those possible tweaks, we think we could make to, again, for us, put our best foot forward when you think about everything that we do for clients.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, thinking about the catastrophic waterfall impact of the global pandemic on so many things, including stocks, bonds, investments, business, real estate. I mean, it's really incredible to zoom out now that we're a few years out and take a look at how that's changed things even permanently. And I think you're right. You just have to encourage your clients to just, trust you, and we know what we're doing and we're going to work through this. And, there's so much that's going to be changing. Think about the introduction of artificial intelligence in every single industry, and wealth management and financial planning are not immune to that. So I'm curious, how do you see the role of independent RIAs evolving over the next 1, 5, and 10 years with things like changing regulations and digital innovation?
Yeah, so another great question. And to answer that, I'll zoom out and give a little context. So there's obviously dozens of different affiliation models, and some advisors that will specialize more in investments versus planning versus insurance. But at the end of the day, advisors tend to fall into one of two camps. There's captive advisors that tend to be affiliated with larger institutions, banks, broker dealers, wirehouse models. And by and large, they're told, here are the products you can use, here's the services you can provide, here's the technology that you can leverage. In contrast, you have more of the independent model where advisors have the flexibility and freedom to make all those decisions based upon what they think is going to be the best interest, of their clients. Now, pros and cons to both. Now, I'm obviously biased, having spent my entire career on the independent side, but as you think about all the advances with technology, when you think about the increased regulatory environment where you need to be able to document down to the T everything you're doing for clients, and why that's in their best interest, I do think that gets much harder to do in that captive environment. And that's why you're actually been seeing a huge exodus into the independent model. I think Cerulli just came out with a study, and they forecasted independent RIAs being the fastest growth channel over the next decade. You're already starting to see that, and again, would expect that trend to continue. I think within independent RIAs and RIAs in general, another sort of catalyst for that is a big shift towards more financial planning. Historically, there were a handful of RIAs that were just the investment specialists. As clients' needs evolve, as you can now do more with basic technology, I think people are realizing, hey, we can include this in our offering. That's something, the end of the day, is only going to put those clients in an even better position, with respect to making progress against their goals. Again, I at times struggle saying that because we lean very hard into the investments, but I would argue at the end of the day, a good financial plan with average investments, 10 times out of 10, that's going to trump a great investment portfolio with no plan or thought for tax or risk or asset location, well as a million different variables that ultimately go into every recommendation that we make.
Right. Well, and also to consider the rising generations of new money, acquired money, generational wealth, and what are their preferences, which are likely different potentially from that of their parents or grandparents, from whom maybe they're acquiring their wealth, or they're developing their own wealth through the NIL, or startup business, entrepreneurship. Social media TikTok has driven tons of revenue into US businesses and individuals. And so to think about the trajectory of the individual in conjunction with good investment practice, in my opinion, which is having zero experience or accreditation in financial planning or investments, seems like that would be a really good balance of the two.
Absolutely. And again, we talk about industry is going to continue to evolve. I think that's something, all else being equal, you have to evolve to survive and thrive. But in an environment where we have more flexibility to do so, that just seems like a natural place for folks that want to position themselves and their practices, their clients, for long-term success.
Yeah. And I'm curious your opinions, the financial industry across, whether it's investment management or financial planning, it is seeing a surge in more tech-driven solutions, from robo-advisors to AI-powered analytics. How are you feeling or seeing that technology potentially reshaping the role of wealth managers and financial planners in the next decade?
Yeah, so another great question, and I'll quickly share. I was listening to a podcast. There's a gentleman, Eddie Pinero, a few weeks back, who talked about in 10, 15 years, there's going to be two types of companies: those that leveraged AI and those that no longer exist. Now, time will tell. Again, not sure industries are going to completely go away if they don't get on board. But that's something our team, we use it every single day. At this point, I couldn't envision not having that part of our tech stack and in our processes. When you think about the efficiency for outlining client communications, you think about being able to research a very nuanced aspect of the tax code that maybe only impacts one or two clients. I mean, for us, that gives us the ability to communicate much more effectively, much more efficiently, to a much larger base. Obviously, all of those aspects, translate to success long term. The question I do get often is, as a financial advisor, are you worried about AI, taking over your job, your role? And again, time will tell. At least at the current iteration, I sleep pretty well at night, feeling that I will be gainfully employed. And I think a lot of that is, I'll use an analogy. I think technology today is almost like a jukebox. You have to know how to prompt it. You have to know what questions to ask in order to get the right answers to position your plan or a portfolio. No different than, hey, you want to hear a song, you go in and you tell the machine, here's the song I want to play. You think about technology's ability to really diagnose and then prescribe. We can tell Alexa, play a sad song, but that could be a country song about a lost loved one or a pop song about a teenage breakup. One of those, I'm guessing, is not going to resonate depending upon what's getting you down. And so I think that's where, again, at least at the current stage, don't know that the technology is in place where it can really walk through and ask those questions to be able to give investors the right answers. Second part of that is a big, I'll say, benefit or feature value of what we do as advisors is truly being an accountability coach. So you think we're in the beginning of the year here, at some point, I think it's like 90% of New Year's resolutions, end by the end of February. The common one is, hey, I want to lose some weight. I want to get healthier. Anybody with an internet connection can go watch a few videos on nutritional best practices and create an exercise routine and a regimen. More often than not, I would argue somebody that has a similar amount of motivation that goes out and hires a trainer, that's going to diagnose where they're at, what changes they need to make, then help tweak their program over time. Majority of the time, I'm guessing, that individual with a trainer, they're coming out ahead 3 months, 6 months down the road. Never mind you think about that benefit that's then compounded over potentially decades.
I could not agree more with everything you said. I love the jukebox analogy. Thank you. I'm going to steal that and I'll credit you. The way that I talk about AI, even to our clients, because in marketing, for example, there's a lot of artificial intelligence that frankly is pretty decent.
Sure.
But where we strive, just like you mentioned, is the level of strategic thinking that we put into place by deeply understanding the ins and outs of our clients, and not just the words that they're telling us or the prompts that they're giving us, but doing our own deep dive research into what's all their staff saying, how are they all feeling? Let's go back and audit the last 6 years of their work. To replace that with AI, at least for what we do, I also sleep very soundly at night and feel confident that we're irreplaceable at this point in that very specific thing that we do. But the other way that I look at AI is that it's a tool for expediency. It's not the solution. And it's really clear if I go on my LinkedIn, I can pick up in 6 seconds whose LinkedIn posts are AI generated. Sure. Versus who maybe used AI as a tool for expediency to then add their own flavor, versus those who just didn't use it at all. And it's so fascinating now, if you really pay close attention to the next time you're scrolling on LinkedIn or different social channels, you can pick that up in copy, especially, and in written word, it's very easy to identify. In fact, for a client, this was in 2024, in front of everyone at a big conference. There were about 200 people in the room. I asked everyone to write a brand story about their company using ChatGPT. And the first 2 people who raised their hands, their first sentence used 3 of the same words as the other company. And I'm sitting here and I'm just tickled absolutely pink because, that was a gamble for me to do that on stage in front of 200 people and be like, please work.
Sure.
But it did, right? And so, and to your point, if you want to get something out of something, you really have to think about what you're going to put into it. And so if you're going to use that as a platform, you have to know it's a tool, not the answer. It's only as good as what I put into it. And I still have to use my brain and think, and then also assess, like, where is this going to go and what's the impact I want it to make?
Without a doubt, and agree. I think it's an enabler. Or maybe more of a multiplier, but you take, the biggest multiplier multiplied by zero still gets you to the same equation. It's not going to replace, completely from scratch, but yeah, to your point, where you're able to learn and incorporate it, that absolutely, can allow you to do more, do it faster, and, do it at a much larger scale.
Yeah, 100%. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit more about you and some of the things you do. So you're actively involved with the CFA Society of Boston's career development in the career development and content committees. So working with young professionals, what are some things you share with them as they're contemplating joining, or they're already in and they want to stay in the finance industry? What's some advice you give?
Yeah, so there's two pieces I'll emphasize. The first, I think, and I know you've even had people on your show that have discussed the importance of networking, and especially for a younger person, I don't know that there is a single thing that you can do that is more effective. I would tweak that and say, as equally important is then staying in touch with your network. I'll have a lot of younger folks, particularly coming out of college, set up a conversation and you never hear from them again. Maybe there wasn't an opportunity that aligned with what they were looking to do, but very rarely will you get an email from somebody 6 months down the road. Hey, just want to check in, let you know, here's what I'm doing. Here's my aspirations. If you see or hear anything, please keep me in mind. I think it's those subsequent conversations where you really harvest a lot of that value that, again, I don't think folks are necessarily as good at staying on top of. Granted, realize it's difficult to do, and it's hard enough just sending a cold LinkedIn message to try and connect, but those subsequent conversations, again, I think that's where you can really develop more of a relationship where a lot more of that value is ultimately gained. The second thing I'd say, and especially for younger people, is just taking a step back and maybe reframing their focus or goal for the first leg of their career. I'll have a lot of people, particularly right out of school, reach out, hey, can I pick your brain? I want to be managing a XYZ strategy in 5 years. Do you think I should take the CFA? And I'd say anytime you make a commitment that's literally going to require thousands of hours of your life and a lot of stress, I would more encourage you to think, start with the end in mind and think backwards. What makes you sure you absolutely want to do this? Do you enjoy it? Are you even good at it? I can tell you it's going to be a lot more fun if you're good at it. And so having people take a step back and maybe not be as prescriptive of here's exactly the next 2, 4, 5 years, more try different things, see what you like, and ultimately the money you make in the early part of your career is probably the taxes you pay later on. And so be more focused on how do I get into a role that I enjoy, that I'm good at, that I can contribute, as opposed to, all right, here's my life jotted out on paper, let me go chase that pursuit.
You definitely win the award for best and most frequent metaphors on our podcast, Erik. I love that so much. The money you make now is the taxes you pay later. I'm going to add a third to your list, and I've shared this example a few episodes ago. This was not a young person, but it's feedback I now give to young people that I mentor. I mentor a few young women at Johns Hopkins right now. So I was walking into a networking event. It was a really hot, muggy day. There were mosquitoes all over the parking lot. I'm just trying to get inside. And I was just attending this event. I wasn't sponsoring, speaking. I was essentially a nobody walking in.
Sure.
And on my way in, I met this person, joined me in the parking lot, and we just kind of walked into the building together. And the first thing out of their mouth was, here's who I am. This is my name. Here's my business card. I'm in commercial real estate. So if you or anyone is looking, please think of me. And we
Sure.
walked inside. I went immediately to the restroom and I threw out their business card. And so what I share with young folks that I talk to is, you, if you can't build a valuable relationship with someone without immediately jumping into your own, what's your own prerogative and the things that you're looking to gain out of that relationship, then that's not a relationship. That's not something that has legs, where you're really genuinely interested in this person, whether or not they're going to financially contribute to you. And if you can build a relationship built on value versus transaction, that relationship will turn into tenfold, in terms of gain. And I've experienced that. I've completely shifted how I quote unquote network with people. In fact, it's how you and I met, right? Like, I'm not leading with pushing myself. Certainly, I'm not silly. I have a business to run, I have money to make,
Sure.
but I'm not leading with that. If anything, it's how can I help you? What do you need? Who can I connect you with for things that you're looking for? To me, that builds a really valuable relationship that doesn't feel icky and transactional and very one-sided.
Wholeheartedly agree. And again, I think being able to communicate succinctly and efficiently is certainly important. And there's something to be said for that elevator pitch. But arguably more importantly is having that context to know when to use it and when not. And if that's the first thing out of your mouth in that example you shared, that doesn't leave me with the best feeling of, I really want to go out of my way to help this person. And really, at the end of the day, I think you and I would both agree. I mean, that's the goal of networking. Sure, you want to meet folks, that ultimately become clients. No different on my end, but a lot of that, it's not that person, it's who they then talk to. And if you made a good impression, that person's willing to make that connection. That also gets that multiplier effect of, you talk to 5 people that talk to 5 people. There's now potentially 25 people, that could be referred to you. Just like anything, this is a numbers game.
100%. Yeah. And a couple episodes ago, we described it as networking. The way to think of that word is actually flip it. It's a working net of people around you they're working on your behalf, that are going to bring your name up and your business up in rooms that you're not in. To me, that's success. And so I love that you share that mentality and also share that with younger folks. And I'm curious, mentorship, which you're doing, which I'm doing, is so important. Is there a specific mentor in your life or in your career that's really made an impact on you? And if so, what's some advice that they've given you that still resonates with you today?
Yeah, great question. And there is, I've been fortunate. There's actually been a handful throughout all the different stages. And one gentleman, I was just thinking back, preparing for this, worked together at LPL for probably 6 or 7 of my 10 years there. He was actually responsible for first getting me from the asset management to the consulting side of LPL's business. And, just like any large corporation, they were certainly not immune to, the corporate politics that do go on at times. And his advice to me early on, and every move or every career seat I've been in since, it only becomes more real, was the best way to navigate that is really understand, when you think about the people around you, particularly those directly above and even to beneath you for that extent, what really drives them? What are they passionate about? What gets them really excited? And then conversely, what are those challenges? What are their biggest frustrations? What really ticks them off? Any job, you have the day-to-day, and there are those tasks that you're measured on when you think about performance goals. But to the extent that you can operate and you can drive more attention, more adoption, you can help promote those things those individuals are passionate about, or conversely, where you can help to reduce or eliminate, some of those headaches, you're going to be in that individual's good graces. And candidly, I can't think of anything else that's going to have a greater impact on your career than having those folks around you, just having that amazing, or having that view of you that, this is the person that really gets it done.
Yeah, I can't second that enough. And I think there's also, especially if you're speaking with someone younger, again, if I've been mentoring young folks in college or early in their career, there's definitely a line as well that you need to learn of, I'm going to be like, I'm first in, last out type of mentality, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to constantly provide value while being a really empathetic human. You have to be really mindful if you have that mindset to not then get taken advantage of, or they're like, well,
Sure.
Erik's just going to get it done. He'll just do it. Right. And so I think that's a layered lesson within that is I agree with you 100%. That's how I show up every single day. I would rather provide as much value as possible, but having a boundary set to know when, maybe this isn't right for me, and have the confidence to then make a change.
Absolutely. Very well said.
And so when you're working with teams, and it's interesting, in my experience working with different RIAs, family office folks, people like you, in an environment where you have an office where there's a lot of different wealth managers or financial planners, and they have their own books of business, in a way they're kind of competing, but kind of not, right? But there are politics within that. How do you coach people on fostering cultures of trust and excellence and performance, but also collaboration within each other?
Sure. And I don't know if this is necessarily going to be the answer you're looking for, but I've been very fortunate throughout my entire life. So being on a number of teams professionally, even playing team sports through college, and looking back at those leaders that you really wanted to emulate, those that you trusted to the point where you would follow them into war. They all seem to have the same trait, which is you felt like they would do the same for you. And that's something I've tried to embody. I mean, obviously, as an employer, as somebody who manages a team, you have to take care of your employees. The numbers have to work out. You have to give the career path and give them the tools, the resources they need to be successful. But at the end of the day, if you're going to ask for somebody to give you their best, they have to know that you're willing to do the same for them. And particularly for some of those less glamorous aspects of our business, hey, somebody's traveling or somebody's out sick. Okay, you need to jump into the trading tool and you need to do some rebalancing. Or there's an issue with the transfer, got to call the back office, spend an hour and a half, getting transferred 18 different times before you get the right answer. That's going to do it. Again, not the fun stuff that we get to do, but equally as important to being able to accomplish what you're looking to deliver to a client. And again, if your folks you're willing to jump on there with them, do whatever it takes, at least in my experience, that's been a good motivator for people willing to do the same for you. And I would put trust, excellence, collaboration, all of that just falls under the same umbrella of, hey, what is the best you can do to help others. It's been my experience thus far, and open to other suggestions as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think something I really try to do as a leader and the CEO with our team members, because we have contractors, we have full-time folks. And so what I'm trying to do is two things. Number one, no one that comes into my agency is doing work that I haven't done myself, and they're not processes I built myself. And I'm very proud of that I've been at the lowest position to the highest position. So that's kind of step one, is like, I get you. I know what you're going through. Let's work through this together. But step two is, I'm not going to sit up here in my ivory tower and be like, well, just do it because it's my process, right? Instead, I'm trying to talk to every layer of the team at least twice a month, if not weekly, depending on where they fall. But to say,
Sure.
like, how are things going? What are some hiccups that you're experiencing? Is there anything that would make your job faster or more efficient? And so I think a really good team is built on a leader that recognizes that maybe they don't know everything, and that's okay. But that desire to evolve and improve based on what your team directly needs, where your business is today, to me is a big indicator of success.
Without a doubt. And again, not only does that for you identify those areas where people need additional resources or coaching or education, whatever it is, but also shows you're willing to make that investment in your time, in your people, to get them what they need. Again, not that you may or may not have every answer, but at least willing to spend the time to understand the challenges and help folks get what they need to get it done. I think that just ties back to we are part of a team, even if there are individuals that potentially compete for some segments of business. At the end of the day, it's more about the name on the front of the jersey than the back. to use another sports metaphor.
We're gonna have like a little metaphor ticker on this podcast for you, and it'll ding every single time one goes up. So, just to wrap it up, Erik, thank you so much. By the way, this has been an awesome conversation as always. If you could give your younger self any advice, you're just starting out, what would it be?
So great question. And I think back, we were talking earlier, the person that would always show up and do whatever it took. I felt like I graduated in 2008, height of the global financial crisis. It was difficult to get a job, never mind in the financial services world. And so that's something I felt like you had to be very highly motivated and work very hard. I think I was certainly guilty at times of not having enough of that perspective. I shared it earlier of, all right, here's my career path. Okay, I'm going to take this role. Where does that put me in a year from now? Where does that put me for 2 years from now? As opposed to more naturally letting that play out. You show up, you go to work, make sure you have some fun along the way. I think that was something, and obviously different back then, different economy, different circumstance when you're just starting out and may or may not have student loans. But that was something, felt like it was always a race to get to the next piece, as opposed to taking some time, step back, maybe be a little more present, truly live in the moment and enjoy it for what it's worth. Again, nobody necessarily wants to stay in that entry level job forever, but I think there's more to be learned in that earlier part of your career. Hey, what do I like? More importantly, what do I not like? As opposed to, here's what I need it to look like, and let's go make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. I was, as I was prepping for this podcast, I was thinking about what my answer for this would be. And this is a really tricky one to think about. And for me, it kind of boiled down into two things. The first is, particularly as an entrepreneur, we do a lot of discussions around startup life and being a self-starter and kind of paving new ways on this podcast. And when I launched Mill & Co., I was 27 years old, just had a bachelor's degree. And that's kind of how I looked at it. It was like, I have no business running a business. I don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't back myself for a really long time. And I was doing well, and we were profitable and hiring full-time people and paying their health insurance. And yet I still didn't allow myself to feel like I've made it. And this is just, zoom out 7-8 years ago now. But the advice I would really try to give myself is that you are worth it. You are good at what you do, and people would not be spending money with you if you weren't. And so you got to back yourself. The second piece of advice I would give myself, much younger, would be to buy a multifamily way before interest rates on mortgages were whatever the hell they are now. So those are my two pieces of advice for my younger self.
Great advice. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't know rates are coming down anytime soon. So
nope.
Absent a time machine, may have to be a little patient there.
Damn it. To my future kids. Well, Erik, thank you so much. As always, it's such a pleasure catching up with you. I really appreciate you making time to come chat with me.
Likewise. Thank you so much, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah. And thanks so much for everyone who tuned in to The Mill this week. We will see you next month.